This episode is brought to you by Honda. When you test drive the all-new Prologue EV, there's a lot that can impress you about it. There's the class-leading passenger space, the clean, thoughtful design, and the intuitive technology. But out of everything, what you'll really love most is that it's a Honda. Visit honda.com/EV to see offers.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back to the Mixed Doubles podcast. I'm your host, Maggie Robinson, and today we have a special guest on the pod. But before we get into that, if you're interested in more content, please follow us on Instagram at Mixed Doubles Pod. That's 1D, the mix and the doubles, share it. And as always, all opinions stated here are our own, and they have no affiliation with our employer. And with that being said, I would like to welcome our special guest, Ernie.
Hello, everybody. I'm Ernie Robertson. Thank you, Maggie, for having me. Josh, I hope you're enjoying your time on vacation. For those who don't know me, I am Josh's good friend. I happen to be his roommate. We also played on the football team together at Columbia, so I've known Josh for a little while, but found this opportunity when Josh was away to hop in here, and I'm super grateful that you guys are having me. Not only did I play football in college, but I also played on the track team. I say play because I didn't really run. Not a fan of running, but I'm a fan of watching it. I ran track in college. I was a high jumper. So I've always been sort of an avid track and field fan. My dad and brothers all competed in track. So I've just been watching it for a little while now. So I'm super excited to be here with you today, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, so Ernie is going to lead us through a whole segment on all the big Olympic races in track and field. Going to give you everything you need to know, just like a short list of all the names, all the big events. So that's super exciting. But to kick this off, as we always do, let's get into it with big plays.
And big players.
All right, so my big player is Coco Gauff for maybe the most iconic reason ever. She is the youngest flag bearer and the first female to ever hold a U.S. flag in the opening ceremonies alongside LeBron James. If that isn't the most just like mic drop statement you've ever heard, I don't know what is.
No, it's amazing. It's amazing. And they looked really cool out there.
They really did. So it was raining in the opening ceremonies, but that kind of just added to the effect. They were all on this big like yacht or ferry, and there's photos of LeBron and Coco holding the U.S. flag, just like shuttling through the dark water, and it just is so iconic. The internet ate that up. There's so many good memes about it.
Yeah. I saw a few memes of them looking like George Washington crossing the Delaware, and that was a good laugh. But yeah, the internet is undefeated, as they say.
So good. Who is your big player this week?
My big player this week is Tori Husk. To keep it on theme with the Olympics, Tori Husk was the first individual gold medal winner for the U.S. at this Olympics. Today, actually, she won the 100-meter butterfly in the Tokyo Olympics. She actually just missed out on a medal. So this was a big win for her. Still very young in the sport. Big name to watch out for going forward. So excited to see what she and the rest of the women's swimming team can do.
All right, so let's get into some general industry news before we talk all things Olympics. WNBA, not a ton going on, but we had some big moves. So Shericka Jackson, who was selected 4th overall this year by the LA Sparks, just signed a shoe deal with Skechers, which makes her the first ever WNBA player to partner with a brand. I don't know about you. This is an interesting one to me. Because in my mind, all I can think of are those like Skechers shape ups. That's my only association with Skechers, is them being like such a mall brand. Yeah. And she's obviously such an elite athlete. So I think they're trying to change their brand identity, which I get.
Yes, for sure. And Skechers is actually making a big push over the past few years. Last year, they added Julius Randle. I'm a big Knicks fan, so giving him a signature shoe. And so this seems like the next push in them sort of expanding into the women's side of the game as well.
Yeah, I can't help but wonder, like, what's it going to look like? That's my biggest question. Is it going to look cool? Because it has to have like a cool factor. And Skechers is such an uncool brand, in my opinion.
Yeah. But that's why you get the people you do. Like, that's
true.
Why Peter Jackson, like, that's why you do those things.
Yeah, that's so true. And I mean, they're tapping in at a good time. The All-Star game happened last week, and they had the highest ever viewership with 3.4 million viewers on ABC. Up from 1 million the year before. That is an insane jump.
Yeah, that's actually unbelievable, honestly. And you guys spoke about it last week, but the quality of game that they put together compared to a lot of other All-Star games was amazing. And I know it's an Olympic year, and I know it's sort of a unique scenario, but the storylines really aligned where you get your Olympic team, those people who got stuffed a little bit or felt like they did, and then playing
Mhm.
each other. So it seemed like it set up something really cool and interesting that a lot of other All-Star games haven't been able to capture.
Yeah, no, it's cool to see them at the forefront of something like this. And leading into soccer. So currently, as we are recording right now, the US is playing Germany in their first round stage, and they're winning 3-1. So let's all cross our fingers that by the time this is posted, the US has 2 wins under their belt. But some names to note: Sophia Smith and Mallory Swanson have been absolutely carrying this team, as we all assumed they would, but they haven't been healthy at the same time for genuinely like months. Mallory Swanson is just coming back from, I think, like a torn ACL or something. They beat Zambia 3-0. She had goals there. Sophia Smith scored goals there. They've both scored against Germany. So if they're not just putting the team on their backs and running, like, I don't know what they're doing.
That amazes me too. Like some of these athletes' ability to really handle injury well, it's not an easy thing to do. And to
Yeah.
come back, lead your team like this, it's pretty amazing. And I'm not super familiar with soccer, to be completely honest, but I would assume Germany is a pretty good soccer team.
Germany's good. Like Zambia, I
Yeah.
was like, okay, we should be winning this. Like, great that we did, but don't get too excited. That was like step one. Germany, if we keep a 3-1 score versus Germany, I'm literally knocking on wood right now. That would be so huge to like rewrite our national brand, because I feel like last World Cup was just such a poor showing on our part. We just didn't play well, and we were still kind of relying on like the old guard, like the Alex Morgans, and she was left off this team. So this is really interesting to see how well they're going to do without all their big names, without Megan Rapinoe, without Alex Morgan, you know? So I
Yeah.
think this is really like a new wave of talent. And it's just like exciting to see where Emma Hayes and her coaching style takes them.
Yeah, I think that's going to be exciting to see.
Not so exciting and super weird, in my opinion, is this Team Canada drone issue. So for those of you guys who don't know, women's soccer team in Canada just lost 6 points in the Olympic tournament, and their coach was banned for a year for drone spying. So they were using a drone to video other teams playing and practicing to then like get more film on them and to like tactically know what their plays are and know what their set pieces are. This is like the biggest no-no.
Yeah. The most obvious no-no. The most obvious.
Right. Also, it's a drone. How do you not see a drone? Like that.
It's like not to condone looking at people's practices, but also if you're gonna do it, don't do it. I don't know if anybody's ever heard a drone near them. Very loud and very
You can
loud.
hear it. It sounds like a really loud mosquito. Like it's not a quiet little sneaky thing. It'd be more sneaky to like send in a scout or to
Yes.
send in like a
Yeah.
security guard who's, again, we're not giving them
Not
ideas. We're just
condoning
now
it.
we're just saying
We're just saying if you're gonna do it better.
do it smarter. Like,
Yeah.
what are you doing? So that's T. And so it essentially means that Canada's pretty much out.
Yeah.
Like you're so far behind, starting -6 points in the opening rounds. You're pretty much out of the Olympics. And the only thing that I find issue with here is that it penalizes the players more so than the coach. Even if you're banning the coach for a year, like these players have worked their entire lives to get to this point. And for this to be a decision that they probably weren't a part of or even aware of, feels like it could have been handled a different way. And I know you have to set a precedent, but like as a former player, that just feels so deeply unfair. And so
Yeah.
I feel for them.
And it seems like the punishment didn't really reflect the crime, I guess.
Yeah.
Like you're saying. It just seems, and even only a year ban for the coach seems like a
Right.
little light if you're gonna dock the team 6 points.
Yeah. Well, you should make it so the coach cannot coach the next Olympics. Like what
Yeah.
1 year is nothing. Okay. Like, what? Yeah. So that's an interesting one. There might be more to come from that, but if you see Team Canada out early, you know why. But let's jump into our big story and your area of expertise, Olympics track and field.
So this year, the track and field groupings and events are going to be very, very interesting. It's a very unique time in not only sprinting, long distance, field events, just across the board. There's a lot of interesting stories. And I think that track also, while always a very big sport, is coming under more of like mainstream media than it has in the past. The new Netflix show Sprinter, which covers just a few interesting stories of last year's both Diamond League and Worlds track events.
Can you explain to the listener what is the Diamond League?
So the Diamond League most basic form is just events throughout the year. It's your traditional track meet,
Mhm.
but you have very similar racing pool. And this is a way for track athletes to sort of make money consistently throughout the year. So you have some sort of mid-level events, you have some larger events at the end of the year outside of nationals, worlds, etc. for track. So you can use these times to qualify for your national events, which end up being qualifiers for worlds at the end of the year. And there's actually going to be a new league next year, which is very interesting and has the potential to be very impactful into the sport and just not only the eyes on the sport, but the money into the sport.
Mhm.
It is a Grand Slam tournament style track league. And
Wait,
so
how do you have a tournament style track league?
so half the people are basically on payroll. So they're making a consistent amount no matter what, and they just need to compete at all of these events.
Got
So you
it.
so you have your big names, so you'll get Sydney McLaughlins, your Noah Lyles, your Shericka Jacksons, all sort of on their payroll, getting paid consistently to compete at these events. And then you have the other side of the field, which is maybe up and coming runners, people who have performed well in some Diamond League events, people who have an interesting story, and they will compete with the opportunity to then in the next season be on the payroll. So it's kind of like a
That's like a
gladiator.
two-tier system. It's like
Yeah, yeah.
Premier League and then relegation.
Yes,
Like you gotta
exactly.
work your
Exactly.
way in.
Exactly.
Got it. That's cool. Also,
Yeah.
consistent payroll is huge because track is such an underfunded sport in general, men's and women's, truthfully. Like,
Mhm.
especially like I know so many track athletes really struggle to make a living because you have to dedicate all your time to training if you're training at such a high level. But
Yes.
if they're not sponsored by big brands, like it's really hard to make ends meet that way.
Yeah, and I think what can happen is a lot of the big name track athletes, obviously, you see them in the media, you see them with all these brand sponsorships, but it's so top heavy.
Mhm.
Honestly, more than probably most other sports where your top dogs are making a decent amount that they can live off of and compete. And then you have a very large majority who it's not necessarily a viable option to just be a track athlete. It doesn't necessarily make them the money they want. So Diamond League was the sort of nexus of the idea to bring more money into the sport, but I think that this new sort of Grand Slam system has the opportunity to sort of elevate that to the next level and spread the wealth a little bit more in the sport.
Okay.
So outside of McLaughlin, one of the other biggest stars in the sport, Sha'Carri Richardson, is very much in the eye for this Olympics, and I think
Mhm.
she's one of the most interesting stories. So for those who don't know, Sha'Carri, she sort of popped up onto the scene around 2019 when she was finishing up as a sprinter at LSU. She came onto the scene, had amazing season in her last year at LSU, really popped up on the scene. She actually ended up qualifying for the Tokyo Olympics in 2021. Unfortunately, for unforeseen circumstances, she wasn't able to compete. And then following those sort of events, she struggled a little bit in the major track meets. She struggled a little bit in nationals, a little bit in sort of her Diamond League races. Always doing well, but never having the consistency that people kind of expected from her coming out of
Yeah.
college.
I think there was definitely some negativity because Sha'Carri, her whole persona is big, it's flashy, it's in your face. And so when she was doing really well at LSU and when she qualified for the Tokyo Olympics, it was like, look at me, like all eyes on me. And then when she started to do bad, she still had all that attention on her because she'd drawn it based on her persona that she'd built. And there was so much negative chatter around like, oh, you're all talk. Like you can't actually back up what you're saying. Like, are you really the fastest woman alive? Like you're just
Yeah.
like a flash in the pan. And so I think that's what makes this story so interesting. I know you're about to get into it, but that character arc, I want to say, of how she was perceived in the media has been so influential.
Yeah, and I always think a lot of these athletes are put in between like a rock and a hard place because being a big personality in a sport like this is very difficult. One, it brings eyes to you, and at the end of the day, it brings money into your pocket. But like you said, if you don't perform like you're going to, it can be very difficult, especially in the media, especially in the US. But yeah, in 2023, she had a big resurgence, not only dominating the field during the regular season, but winning worlds in the 100 meters with a time of 10:65. And this time is very, very impressive. Placed her as the fifth fastest woman in the event of all time, which is,
Wow.
yeah, not only was it amazing for her to show up in a moment like that the year before the Olympics, sort of setting the tone for everyone else, but to solidify herself as one of the best people to ever do it. And track is a beautiful sport where it's all about time. And
Mhm.
now she has the time to back it up. Now she just has to do the things showing up consistently in those big time events. Well, interesting thing is the US, while having great sprinters and a great track and field history, has really not been super dominant within the sprinting game for a while. You had obviously Allison Felix, who was an amazing athlete, one of the greatest athletes of all time. You have Cindy McLaughlin in the 400 right now, but it's not really the sprinting that everybody's looking at. The people who have actually dominated sprinting over the past decade, 15 years is Jamaican sprinters, and more specifically the women sprinters. You obviously know, like, you have your Usain Bolts, who's fastest person of all time, but if you really look at what Jamaican women sprinting has done over the past 15 years, they are second to none, truly. They have dominated the field in the 100. Most recently in Tokyo Olympics, they swept the 100 meters, taking
That's
the
wait. Let's pause there. They
yeah,
swept the 100 meters.
swept.
And also, like, I don't, for whoever's listening, if you haven't watched these Olympic track meets, when there's short distance sprinting, we're talking like milliseconds. So to
Yeah.
have three women who are all that fast, like, I'm sure that the trials to make Team Jamaica were probably harder than the Olympics. Like, let
Yeah.
that sink in.
And very much so, sprinting is like the self-proclaimed sport of Jamaica.
Yeah.
And to be a national champion in Jamaica is bigger than pretty much anything you can do.
That's the biggest celebrity status you could have in that country, hands
Yes.
down.
Yes, hands down. So the person who's really led this push over the past years for Jamaica is Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce, who some say is the greatest women's sprinter of all time.
Yeah, let's run through what she's done to give her that
let's
title.
run through it. So Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce is a 3-time Olympic champion and a 10 times world champion. And so this doesn't even include her bronze medals, but she is a very, very, very dominant sprinter in the field.
I also want to just highlight that you said this was the past 10 to 15 years. In my mind,
Yeah.
sprinting is like a very much a young person's sport. Like, sure, your body has to fully develop, but like once you hit puberty and like you're fully like built into your body, you only have a certain number of years at a high level. She's been doing this for 10 to 15 years consistently, like that.
She won her first Olympic gold medal in 2008.
I was 8 years old, Ernie.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. And
Now I'm 23. That's crazy.
It's unbelievable, and she's still competing at a high level. It's unbelievable, but like you said, there is an aspect of track that is a young person sport a little bit. And so she's sort of at that latter half of her career, and I would assume would be her last Olympics, one of her last major events. So she's competing here, but I wouldn't necessarily expect her to be that big of a fight for Sha'Carri at this point. So one of the things that kind of stands out to me is her only being a 3-time Olympic champion. And only sounds kind of crazy, but how much she's been doing it and how dominant she is and being a 10-time world champion, that it seems like it doesn't equate. The only reason that doesn't equate is because another Jamaican sprinter by the name Elaine Thompson-Herah has been simultaneously great in the sport, but instead of showing up at Worlds all the time, she consistently shows up at the Olympics. Consistently, every year in and year out, shows up and performs unbelievably at the Olympics. She is a 5-time Olympic gold medalist.
Gold medalist?
5-time Olympic gold medalist. Has doubled, so has won the 100 and 200 twice, and has tripled a single time. So she won a 1, 2, and 4 in the last Olympics.
No, that's crazy.
Yeah. While she might not be consistently the best all the time, she has that competitor in her that when the Olympics comes around, she turns into a different athlete and different competitor altogether.
I know you definitely played with people, and I played with people too, who like in practice, like they're whatever. And like on small games, like, they're fine. And then somehow you get into the biggest game of your life and they're playing lights out, and you're like, where have you been for like literally months? This is what it sounds like. But you know what? It's working in her favor. She's 5 medals in. So.
Yeah. And I'm sure Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce is thinking the same thing. Like, what are we here? Like, what is going on?
Come
Because
on.
for the past 3 years, you've not been this good. And
Yeah.
so she has also sort of dominated the field in the Olympics and has really made it difficult for these two have really been dominating the field over the past 10, 15 years, making it difficult for really any other country to be super competitive or at least compete for the championship in sprinting in both the 100 and 200. Unfortunately, she will not be competing in this Olympics.
Why not?
Because she got injured. So she dropped out just before Jamaican Nationals. I think it dampens the field a little bit, but these two are not the only Jamaican sprinters because, like I said, in the last Olympics, they did sweep. So we're thinking about 1, 2, 3. We can't mention the three without mentioning Shericka Jackson. Shericka Jackson is what many consider to be the next face of Jamaican sprinting. While she is 30, so she's been doing it for a little while, she has sort of really come into her own over the past few years, not only within the 100, but within the 200 as well. She qualified for the Olympics, obviously, winning both at Jamaican Nationals. And so they're expecting a lot out of her. And so I think that the really what to look out for is Jackson versus Sha'Carri. Which one of those are going to sort of perform and step up during the Olympics? I think you obviously have Shelly-Ann Fraser-Pryce, who can sort of make a splash. She is one of the greatest to ever do it, so never count her out. But I think those are really the two to watch for this 100 meter, and a very interesting story because they've been battling sort of back and forth over the past few years. Sha'Carri winning last year, Jackson winning years before. So it's really been a back and forth that I think a lot of people in the track world are keeping their eyes out for that I think is interesting.
Yeah. I know in long distance, like we study the Kenyan runners and they have such a history of developing winners. But we need to study what the Jamaicans are doing because they've been doing on the men's and women's side the same way the Kenyans have been winning all these long distance events. Like
it's the culture. It's the culture of what I think in a similar way where the US, like a lot of athletes are very good at basketball and you have that dominance and where you culturally care about certain things. I think that is their sport.
Yeah.
That's their sport.
You said it's literally their national sport is track.
It's not just track, sprinting.
Oh, sprinting specifically?
Because you don't see a lot. I don't know any Jamaicans long distance runners. Honestly,
I couldn't even name an 800 runner.
Nope.
It ends at 400.
Yeah, I couldn't name anybody over the 400, to be honest with you.
Wow.
Yeah. So you want to be fast. You want to be quick. You want to be the best in the world. It's an amazing thing. But
let's talk about the 200. I know that's still a pretty dominated event for the Jamaicans, but I think the US has some good people this year.
Yes. So we were mentioning Shericka Jackson. She is looking to not only compete in the 100, but is looking to double in the 1 and 2. She currently has a PR of 21.41. And she's consistently broken her PR over the past few years. This not only makes her the fastest in the world at this moment in time, but also puts her at second fastest of all time behind Flojo out of the US, who set the 200 meter world record in 1988.
Oh my gosh. So this is long standing. Also, I want to say, how badass is it to be able to call yourself the fastest woman alive?
Yeah,
there's no other physical feat, like strongest woman alive, whatever, fast, something about like the speed and running, like
because in theory, not everybody can do everything, not everybody can play basketball, and not everybody can there's something about being fast that's like, okay, everybody gets what that means. Everybody understands what it means to be the fastest, and your time tells you if it's true.
Right. It's cut and dry. Like you either are or you aren't. And I remember you guys probably had this too growing up. We had like the president's test in lower school and you had to like run a mile and do a certain number of push-ups and pull-ups. And I remember whoever ran the mile fastest, it was one of my friends and she was a fantastic runner, was just so cool. Like she had so much clout and like everyone was like, oh, I want to be your friend because you're fast. And this woman is like legitimately doing this at the highest level, which just blows my mind.
Yes. And she really is that cool. Like she is that cool. And it's the same feeling. It's the same thing for sure.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. But so she is the favorite going into this event, but by a very small margin because none other than Gabby Thomas out of the United States, Harvard grad, is very, 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 very close to Shericka Jackson. She's actually the world lead right now for this season.
Wow.
She did that at nationals. So the way that nationals actually work is nationals happen the same day for every country. So what you'll have is Jamaica will go and they'll run the 200, and then 30 minutes later the US will do it in Oregon, and you'll see all these athletes like on their phone looking to what they set, especially over Olympic year where you're trying to really go in with that mental win. And so Jackson went and she got the world lead. And then about 30 minutes later, Gabby Thomas came and got the world lead.
Oh my gosh.
And so Gabby Thomas has beaten Shericka Jackson a number of times, most notably at last Worlds. So Jackson has a little bit to prove this Olympics because she lost to Sha'Carri in the 100 at Worlds last year and lost to Gabby Thomas in the 200 at Worlds. But it's very much within her reach for both of these events. But I think that story between Jackson and Thomas are very, very, very interesting. And I think that both of them have a very good chance of beating the world record of 23-4 at this Olympics. I think when you get two competitors that are at the top of their game, that are sort of like peaking at their game and are mentally not only competing for a certain time, but competing against each other, I think that's when you get your sort of greatest races. And I think this has the opportunity to shape up as one of those really like classic races, as both of them sit within the top 5 all time in the 200. It's a really amazing race, amazing story that I think is something to keep an eye out for.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like we're going to watch history being made. Like one way or another, most likely someone will break a title, which is so incredible. I also, you mentioned the mental aspect of it, and I want to ask you, as track being such an individual sport and you didn't do any relay events, you did high jump. What did it feel like when you were like mentally locked in? What do you think that they're going through to like mentally prepare for this event?
It's a very interesting thing because everybody handles it pretty differently. While you're mentally locked in, you're also playing a mental game with your competitors. You've competed against these people all the time. You know what to sort of expect out of them. You've seen them do well and you've seen them not perform to their best ability. So I think what your focus is on is, okay, let me make sure all of my things are right. But then the next level of that, is there a way that something that I can do or them seeing me so locked in is going to have an actual impact on their mental and what they're thinking about? And if that could be the millisecond difference, because you're talking about a sport where it's so close that these margins, if I go up to the line, and I'm sure you see a lot of people in 100, they do big jumps before they actually start. If I can do that and I catch somebody looking to my right and looking at me, and that takes their eyes off the line and they set their hand a little bit too far back and they get a worse start than they usually do, that could be the difference between being an Olympic champion and not being on the podium.
Did you have any like quirks that you would do that were like uniquely Ernie things, like pre-match?
I was very different in track than I was in football.
Interesting. You were like two different athletes, kind of?
Yeah.
Wait, let's get into that.
They expect different things out of you. Football expects like you have to be tuned in a little bit differently, I think, with football, to where, okay, I have to remember my plays. I have to remember what other people might be doing. I have to remember the tendencies of the person on the other side. So there's a lot of thought that goes into it. That's like, I'm thinking about all these things at once, but it has to become natural to the point where all of these things are just happening. I would consider myself a pretty big shit talker.
You can say it. Say it with your chest.
Yeah. So I would consider myself a pretty big shit talker, but that was more of me in football aspect. Okay. I think that helped with, okay, I've watched film on this person. I want them to know I know what they're going to do. I want them to know that I'm prepared for what they have coming. In track, what you're focused on is, while yes, there is that mental aspect with your other competitor, an event like high jump, it's so technical that you really have to like focus on little things. And if your mind is too far elsewhere on a jump, you don't really know what you potentially like messed up on for the next one. And you kind of constantly have to be making these adjustments here and there. If it's your knee was a little bit too bent coming off your turn, or your penultimate step was off, or whatever it may be, you have to really be in tune, not only with, okay, did I actually get over the bar, but I might have gotten over the bar, but this type of jump won't get me over the next one. I was a little bit less worried about the other competitors, and honestly, I was pretty friendly, and then I think that makes people uncomfortable enough.
Throws them off. They're like, why is he talking to me? What are you
Exactly.
doing?
And it was funny because some people would give advice, which that
Ooh, that would
that
piss me off. Be like, don't
oh
talk to me. Don't, I know what I'm doing. You know what
yes,
you're doing. Shut your mouth.
but that was their edge though a little bit, and
I
that was
get
one of
that.
the things in high school. This kid would do it all the time, and he was a very good jumper. But like, please stop doing this. Um, it's very annoying, but it worked. I'm not gonna lie, it worked really
Yeah.
well. And I
Yeah.
hate to admit it, but it worked, and it got in people's heads.
Yeah. I wish we could mic up these runners the same way that we mic up like football players or something. Like, I want to know what's going on.
I think that is the hope a little bit for that new league is that you get a little bit more into the athlete's life and what they're actually thinking at the starting line and all that jazz. But
Yeah. I know some people view it as like a little invasive, and I
mhm,
understand that, but I also think in a sport like track, there's so much potential to shed light on it and to give it more visibility that would be so beneficial. All you want to do is go run your meet. Like, you don't want people to know what you're saying.
sure. But there's also those athletes that high level college track has some of the best drama that
Yes.
exists in sports. Like there are some real beefs and real storylines within college track. Like if you talk about USC, UCLA track and field, or I don't know, whatever it may be, people do not like each other for any other reason that they're at the school that is their rival,
Hmm.
and they will talk the most shit because they compete against them a few times a year, and one person wins sometimes and another person wins another. It's
Yeah.
like they are loud about it. If they beat somebody, they will turn around at the finish line and talk shit. Like
Oh,
it's it's good. It's very good.
yeah. I think also what lends itself to all this drama is the fact that it's such an individualized sport. Sure, you're competing on Team USA or you're competing for a college, but it's
Mhm.
really just you. It's not like soccer where you can be like, oh, that was my mistake, but like the whole team didn't play well this game, whatever. No, it's just you. It's either you do it or you don't. So
Yes.
then it's like deeply personal when you do it and are better than someone.
No, for sure. For sure. And like everybody gets what it means to be fast. And when you say I'm faster than you, like it
And
hurts.
she's like,
Hurts-
ah,
It hurts a little bit.
people are untouchable. Speaking of untouchable, let's talk about Sydney McLaughlin
Yeah. I
because she
mean,
is the one to watch for the 400.
this is not said lightly. She is in a caliber of her own. And when it comes to the 400-meter hurdle, there is no one in history who's ever been as fast. And she does not seem like she is at sort of that peak of her career yet. She still has so much growth and potential there
Hmm.
that she's one of the more unbelievable athletes of our generation. She made the Olympics at 17. She's just been different. But what I want to sort of highlight for this race is the potential not only for her to break her own world record, but I think she has a very good chance of potentially being the first woman to break 50 seconds in the 400-meter hurdles, which is
Wow.
it's one of those marks like Usain Bolt's like 10.55 that it seems unattainable to anybody else but a singular person.
Mhm.
And I think that Sydney has a very, very good chance. And while her PR currently is a little bit away from it, you see some tweaks in her game. She's very big on controlling which leg she jumps over, how many steps she does between each hurdle. I think she's at 11 between each hurdle right now, but you've slowly been seeing her push those numbers up, going down to 10, alternating feet over the hurdles, which is it's
That's
unbelievable.
like
Like
writing with your right hand and your left hand for people who
in,
aren't understanding that. That's like not a natural thing to do. You
no,
have your dominant foot and you always want to lead. To lead both feet?
yeah, it's unbelievable with the right tweaks and seeing her progression, especially setting more records at nationals without competitors really pushing her in the field. I think that the Olympics is a better opportunity than any for her to set a new record and potentially break that mark. She might need other athletes there to push her, but she does have the fortune of having Dalilah Muhammad, who is the second fastest woman of all time in the event.
This is some beef that I think. So
Yeah.
let's get into this because I know they're both American. They've been one-twoing it in the 400-meter hurdles. And the thing with Sydney is that as a person, she seems very kind. Like she's not putting
Yes.
out any animosity towards her, but it's definitely like who's faster, who's claiming this. And Josh and I have mentioned this in past podcasts. Sydney doesn't look tired at the end of her races. She will run a record-breaking time and then look like she just took the dog on a walk. It's ridiculous. Her ceiling, I don't think she's even gotten close to it, which is the most exciting thing. But like you're saying, she needs someone there to push her because you can only do so much by yourself.
It's the competitive nature. And that's, I think Dalilah Muhammad's also sort of realized the athlete that McLaughlin is at this point. And it's a little tough because she's at the latter half of her career as well. This will likely be her last Olympics. But you can never count out a person like that who has done so much in the event, in the sport, and just a raw competitor in both of them.
Okay, so many big events coming up. Yes. Where can people watch this? Like, when does this start?
Yes, so the first events are on August 1st, so that is this Thursday, and it's going to be a very, very interesting. I think it's one of the more intriguing sporting events going on right now, especially with the Olympics being sort of the premier event for track and field, and 4 years of build-up. When you get like soccer, you have the World Cup and you have Euros and all that jazz. These athletes are competing and training every year for the Olympics. And so I'm expecting to see a lot of characters, a lot of stories, a lot of heartbreak.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. It's definitely going to be one to watch. Ernie, thank you so much for coming on the pod today. This was so much fun.
This was amazing. Thank you for having me.
And if you guys are interested in more content, as we said at the top, follow us on Instagram at Mixed Doubles Pod. That's 1D, the mix and the double, share it. And you know where to find us. But if you don't, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart, Amazon Music, wherever you listen to your podcast. We're there at Mixed Doubles. But while you're there, make sure to throw us a 5 stars. We love the feedback and support. And if you have any thoughts on how we can improve, send us a little DM on Instagram. But until then, we'll catch you next week. Thanks for listening.